installing and implementing Tomcat for servlet in JSP development. What we're going to do now is we're going to start moving into server-side Java programming, Java web programming on the server. But before we do that, we have to talk about a special application called a web server and an application server that will allow us to implement server-side programming. So what I want to do is kind of give you a nice overview of what server-side programming is, what it's all about, and kind of compare and contrast that to client-side programming. Before you install Tomcat, you need a couple of prerequisites, so I'm going to go over that. Then I'm going to show you how to go out to the internet and download and install and configure Apache Tomcat just for yourself. Of course, anytime you install or download any kind of server, you need to verify and test and make sure that your configurations are working and everything is ready for you to have a nice development environment. Now, I do stress that this particular video here, this is really for development purposes only. Okay, I'm not going to show you how to implement Apache Tomcat for for the enterprise environment or even for any kind of production environment. This is for you, for your laptop or your workstation on how you want to go about doing development. Now, the good news is to move over from your development environment into your testing or your production environment is pretty seamless once you have a good understanding of the development environment. So the first thing I want to kind of go over is the difference between server-side and client-side programming. And that's why I said applets, what's the deal? Well, the deal is straight HTML programming, straight DHTML programming. Maybe you're manipulating HTML programmatically using JavaScript or Visual Basic Script or even just JavaScript programming, which can be extremely complex. I've seen and done some amazing things using JavaScript. Are all client-side technologies. What that means is you have a web server over here, and I'll just put this as your HTTPD for daemon, and I do pronounce it daemon, not demon. It's the Ferengi in me, I apologize, but this is basically your HTTP web server. Okay, that's your web server. And you've got a client out here. So here you are on your laptop or your desktop. And what you do is in client-side technology, you make a request of a web page, something like a .html. You hit the web server then obviously serves that request back to the client, and then any HTML, DHTML, or JavaScript programming, or even VB script, I didn't write it there, but it is processed on the client. Now, that's cool, and I'm sure you've seen such, some very amazing things using those client-side technologies. However, you can't do things like integrate with a relational database management system on the client. You can't integrate with any kind of an email server. Okay, you can't do any of that. Let's say I had a Microsoft SQL or Oracle server out here, or some kind of an email server out here. Well, if the processing is done on the client, how is it able to touch this? Well, it's not able to. Okay, so in server-side programming, what we do is we make a request of something like a .jsp file in Java, .asp in Microsoft, .aspx for ASP.NET, .cfm for Cold Fusion. I think you're starting to see more and more wacky file extensions at the end of these web pages. Well, what happens is, and the model is still the same, it's just the technology is different. You make a request of a .gsp, the web server then goes, oh, I have to do some processing here, maybe hit an email server. Then I'm going to create some dynamic HTML here, and then I'm going to stream it out to the client. And if there's client-side code on the client, I can still process it. So that is why we need Apache Tomcat. Apache Tomcat is a web server, and why? Well, there's several reasons. One, it's a web server that allows us to do this client-side programming. It also, and this is where the Tomcat part comes in, it also understands how to do Java technology. So that's why I say, well, what about IIS? Oh, so let me say the third reason why Apache Tomcat before I get off that. So number one, we need it for server-side programming. Two, it understands Java technology. And three, it's absolutely free. So I don't think you can beat the price point on Tomcat. Okay, it's absolutely free. So it makes a great development environment. Now, what about Microsoft IIS? Well, it's probably no surprise to you that IIS doesn't know the first thing about Java programming at all. No Java happening there. Doesn't know the first thing about it. So in Microsoft IIS, when you send a .gsp request to an IIS box, it goes, I don't know what that is, and it barfs at you. Now, if you send an IIS box at .asp or .aspx, it knows. Now, here's the good news. The good news is, let's say you're a huge Microsoft shop, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm not here to diss Microsoft, okay? But if you're a huge Microsoft shop, there are third-party add-ons by several companies out there that will allow you to configure your IIS box. You download and install this product. You pay for it. It allows you to run Java technologies on a Microsoft IIS box. A very important prerequisite that you need to have that you need met prior to obtaining and installing and working with Tomcat is you have to have Java installed. You have to have the Java development kit. 1.3 or 1.4 is preferred. So how do you verify that you have that? Well, there's several ways of going about that. First, and this is kind of a review of, downloading and installing Java the first time. So if you didn't quite catch this part, this will be somewhat of a review. But there are several ways to verify that you have some version of Java. Like, for example, here you could see my C drive, right? And I have the J2 SDK installed. So that's a good sign. Now, it's not enough just to be able to come here and see this. You see, you have to be able to open up a command prompt. So let me go ahead and do that. And you have to be able to execute the java-version command from any prompt. And you can see that it executed just fine. And the reason that it's executing is because if we take a look at my path, we can see that in the path here is the path to the bin directory. Okay, bin continued on the next line. It is set in my path to the Java bin directory where all the Java binaries exist. If you've forgotten how to do that, let's go into the properties of my computer, and I'm going to click on the properties there, obviously, go into the properties of that. Then we're going to go into the advanced tab. So let's go in there, and then we have environmental variables. And in there is a path attribute. So click path. So if you don't have it, you come down here and this is where you can do. If you don't have path, you can click new and set that up. If you have path but you don't have it configured, you want to click edit. Then you come down here and you type semicolon, because the path is this huge semicolon delimited line there. You type semicolon and then the path to your J2 SDK, and then you're all set. And what the path allows you to do is it allows you to execute Java from any directory, okay, wherever you are, which is going to be important for the web server to be able to do. Now that we've, got the prerequisites down, let's actually go out and get Tomcat. So I'm going to go out to the Jakarta website. And this is going to be a little bit interesting. So let's see how we're going to go about doing this, because there's a little bit of work that has to go into this. This isn't going to be as easy as downloading a setup.exe and kind of wizarding through it. Although, and I'll point it out to you, there is a binary for that. So here we are at the Apache Jakarta project website. This is the home of many wonderful open source tools, namely and probably most famously is Apache, which is probably running half the internet, if not more. I'm going to go to downloads and go into binaries. And this is going to take me to a site or a page in the Apache org website that has all of the particular binaries that are available for download. And that's the first kind of a warning that I point out to you. This website isn't very well organized, at least in my opinion. If you're used to dealing with Microsoft websites where everything is just utterly organized and very well laid out, this site is not. And clearly it doesn't have the backing of Microsoft money to put the time into that. So everything is kind of listed down here. So I'm going to start scrolling down here. And this is where you're going to see the various tools that they have. Beckel, Cactus, things like that. What we're interested is all the way down here. So I'm just going to kind of grab the scroll bar and jump all the way down. And what I want to do is I want to take a look at this. I've got Tomcat version 5.5.4. And what we're going to be interested in is the .zip and the .exe. Now, we're going to do the .zip, okay? The .exe is the download that you can grab if you want to get the executable where you double-click on it and it goes ahead and sets everything up in wizard-like format. Now, before I download it, I want to show you what this PGP and MD5 are. You might, it might sound familiar to you. PGP, pretty good privacy. MD5 is a hashing algorithm. If I click on it, what it shows me is it gives me a key, and if I wanted to verify the integrity of this particular download, I could run this key against the utility to actually verify that this zip file has integrity. In other words, a hacker hasn't gotten into it and changed the binaries, so all my e-commerce data points to some hacker site, okay? that kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and click the 5.5.4 download of the zip file and go ahead and start saving it. Now, it's a 5.5 meg file, and I'll be honest with you, I've already downloaded that file right here, and this is what you get. It's a zip file. Now, I don't have WinZip installed, so I'm just using the Windows XP zip compression utility. So I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say extract all. Now, what you want to do is you want to extract it to your C colon. Okay, don't extract it to any other place than that. Well, I should say I extracted it to C colon because what it does, and if I go ahead and click next, it'll go ahead and uncompress it for me. What it will do is, let me open up my C colon here, is it will put a Jakarta Tomcat 5.5.4 folder right at the root of C. And this is what I wanted, so that's why I extracted it to C colon. Now in there is a document called running, and this is where things get a little bit interesting. This is the latest and greatest version. You could see it was made September of 2004, and it was designed for Java 5. Okay, now we're using Java 1.4, so we're a little bit behind. And that's okay because I want to show you how you can actually implement this and a couple of the extra steps that you have to do in order to implement this in case you're using some of the older versions. You know, a lot of organizations don't allow us developers to jump on the latest and greatest version of the JDK and the JRE, especially if we've already developed a lot of applications to them. So we might be forced to have to be a little bit downward, okay, in terms of the version. So let's see what this document tells us. The first thing it does is it lets us know that this is running with the JRE 5.0. And we start reading it and it says to download it. And then we take a look and it says how to download it, installing it, and then we come to 1.3 here, which is really important. And this is where they want us to set up an environmental variable called Java_home and have it point to the directory in which our Java runtime environment is installed. So if I minimize this stuff and I jump out to my properties here of the My Computer icon, and I bring up my environmental variables off of the Advanced tab, you can see that I have gone in here and I created an environmental variable called Java_home in which I pointed to the CJ2SDK 1.4.2_05 directory. So I've already done that. You need to make sure you do that too. Now, let's take a look as we scroll down here, and it says, aha, running Tomcat with J2SE version 1.4, which what we're doing, or 1.3. And it says we have to obtain a compat package. And it says we go to this website to do that. And then what we do is unzip it. So if I go back to the Jakarta site where I downloaded my zip file from, if I scroll down here, you can see there's a compat zip. By the way, just so you know, anytime you see tar, that's for Unix or Linux. Just without the tar, just a zip, like just 5.5.4.zip or admin zip, that's for us Windows people. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to grab the 5.5.4 compat zip file, and you just click on it and it prompts you to download it. And what I've done is it's 1.28 megs, so really brief download for you. What I've done is I've already downloaded it to my desktop, And because I've extracted my tomcat into the C colon and took the default root directory, I'm going to say, you know what? Go ahead and put that into C colon as well. And when you start extracting it, which I've already done, you get some notifications that you need to overwrite things. Just go ahead and say yes to all. And what that does is it puts a special couple of little files for us in this common endorsed. These two XML or this XML parsing files is essentially what this is. And that's what these directions here tell us. So it says get the compat downloaded, essentially that's 1.1 or 1 sub 1. Unzip it into the Catalina home. Catalina home is defined up here for us as where we installed Jakarta Tomcat. So that's basically our C drive if you just extract a C. And then it says go ahead and follow the directions for starting and stopping the server as you would if you're using it for J2SE 5.0. So we come up here and we see that we have to go into these two directories. And we can see what we can do here is simply go into a command prompt. So let me bring up my command prompt. I'm going to go CMD. And let's go into CD Jakarta, CD bin, okay, and I'll do a dir startup. And you can see there's a startup.bat. And I just go ahead and run that. And it's going to start doing several things for me here. And we'll see it's going to start loading a whole bunch of information. And eventually it's going to tell us that the service is going to start. Server startup in 5,528 milliseconds. And it's basically going to hang out here. Now, I'm going to keep on letting it run in the background because what it says here is after the startup, we can go ahead and test, and this is the last thing I want to show you today is how we're going to test that we've actually got this environment installed so we can start developing to it. So I'm going to go back to my Tomcat. Server started. So let's see if I can run something here. So I'm going to go to my local host. Notice I'm going to http://localhost:8080. In a little while I'll show us how to go ahead and change that default port, but let's just see if we're running here. So this is going to let us know if Tomcat's serving us these web files, and look at that. Here we are. This is being serviced via HTTP. And then we'll scroll down into the examples, and we want to run a couple of servlets and JSP pages just to absolutely verify that we're running. So here's a hello world servlet, so I'm going to click execute. And hey, we're getting hello world. Notice it's not hello world example.html here at all. You don't see HTML or JSP or anything. This is how you know it's being served to us by a servlet. How about a request parameter? So I'll put in my name, Robert Barr. Hit submit, and it's coming back to us. So that's really cool. So our servlets are working. How about our JSP? So I'm going to click back a couple of times, scroll to the examples where we have JSP examples, and let's go to, how about something like implicit objects. See if we get that to work. And we do. And we can see that all of this code, you can see that we have a .jsp up here, and all of the code is being implemented by a .jsp that this server is actually serving a .jsp. So if I put foo, if I put, how about Robert, and see what we get in here for parameters. And I come down here and we can see Robert, the local host is, or the header is host 8080. So all of this stuff is being served to us correctly. Now, to run the service, you just kind of minimize that guy and let it run in the background all the time. To kill the service, you can shut down Tomcat. You could do a couple of things. You could execute the shutdown, or you could simply come into this, DOS window and click the exit and just say end now, and that will end it. And you can verify that it's ended because I'll go to start and local host again, and hopefully, and we should get, basically unable to serve the page. You could see it's trying to connect, and we get the typical page cannot be displayed because we've gone ahead and shut down the service. In installing and implementing Tomcat for servlet and JSP development, I gave you what you need to do to prepare your development environment, specifically like a nice laptop or a workstation. And I gave you a nice overview of what we're going to be doing when we're going to be doing Java server-side development for web applications. Remember, applets are all client-side. And it's really important that you remember that this whole video here, this whole particular one, is just to help us set up a development environment. Okay, we're not doing any kind of a production environment or anything like that. This for development purposes only. Okay, you need Java. Okay, you have to have the JDK installed 1.4, 1.3, or now 5. You go to the jakarta.apache.org website to download it. You install the binaries that you want to install, keeping in mind you might need that compat in order to make it backward compatible. And then you go ahead and test. And remember, the default port, which will probably change up later on, is port 8080. I hope you have found this informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.